Hello, everyone. As you're coming in, we will get started shortly. Just wanted to be able to start the webinar. Will probably be a minute or two before we get started. A couple logistics things, though, while we're waiting on folks to come in. If you can throw out in the chat, if you have ever used Harmonize before, or if you have access to Harmonize, or sort of what your Harmonize experience level is, because we often run these webinars in two tracks, like the things we teach are not Harmonize specific, but we will demo them in Harmonize. And if everyone here happens to be a Harmonize user, well, we could dig a little more on that. If not, we will stay away from some of that. So find your webinar chat and throw out where you're from and if you have any experience with Harmonize, so we know kind of how shallow or how deep to go on any of these topics. That will be awesome. It's going to be a relatively small webinar today. Hey, Liz, good to see you. I guess I should have clicked on the attendees list because I'll probably recognize people. Kate, Geneva, Liz. Yep, excellent. Other folks. Only Liz is put in the chat yet, though. We have to follow Liz's lead. Wallace State Hansville, great. Crystal. All right, so let's dive into some logistics of the webinar, and we can do some introductions of ourselves while we're waiting on folks to come in. So starting with introductions, my name's Marcus, one of the owners of Harmonize. I have with me two folks. Alex is our instructional designer, who has put together a lot of the information in today's session. And I have with me David, who runs a bunch of our webinars, highlighting different ways instructors are using Harmonize and teaching in specific subject areas. So we three are the webinar team, if you will. David will be monitoring the chat. Alex and I will be kind of bouncing back forth on topics so that we can have a breather between things, so that we're not just listening to one person talk the whole time. We will be recording this, so we will send it out after a couple days. I'll give David a couple days to get it out afterwards. In terms of questions, go ahead and put those into the chat. If you have them, you're also welcome to raise your hand. If you'd prefer to ask your question in voice, we can do so. So we'll watch for those hand raised. If that's your comfort level, we can promote you and allow you to talk. Otherwise, throw them into the chat so everybody can see them. Throw comments into the chat as well. Like I think half the fun of a webinar is hearing from other people as well. So it doesn't have to be all our ideas all the time as we're diving into it. Okay, so today, I think that was it on logistics, wasn't it? Alex, David, did I miss anything? I got the nod. Okay, cool. All right, so what today's webinar is about. So a lot of times we think about engagement. Most people think discussion forums, and they think, I as an instructor, how am I going to have the time to continue to engage all 30 of these students that are in a remote setting? How do I do that on a regular basis? How do I get them pulled in? How do I not drive myself crazy trying to accomplish that? And so I like to think about this. I think we even put this in the description, but not to be too alcoholic centric, but I think of it as a cocktail party. Like, you don't just jump into the cocktail party and start having an intense, deep conversation with everyone who's there. There's small talk. There's little things that happen along the way that kind of help you get to know your get fellow people at the party, or in this case, classmates. And how do you do those as an instructor in a way that's not just going to eat up tons of time? So we're going to bounce through a bunch of ideas in this. We're going to call out other tools you can use to do these things. So if you are, like I saw, Scott's not a Harmonize user, so we'll be calling out other ways to accomplish this. We will be demoing these things in Harmonize, and if we can, we will get you some help guides, although I realize I didn't ask this ahead of time. So if there are particular help guides on some of these topics for those that are Harmonize users on how to get some of these things set up, we can drop those into the chat for you as well. But we will be calling out other tools. And if you have tools that you've used or can think of to do this that other folks could benefit from, feel free to put these in the chat. This is not a Harmonize specific thing. So if someone can benefit from a tool you've used to do something like this in the past, please put it in the chat so that everyone can benefit from that. All right, sound good? Alex, is there anything else I missed in our intro?
No, I think you got it.
All right, and you're going to do the screen share, and I will dive in. Actually, I think the first one is me, right?
It might be me, but you can do it if you want to. You
No,
like
you
the
do it.
creative introductions, don't you?
It was the pink versus purple. They were too similar in colors of which ones we were going to take. So you go first.
Yes, a lesson for those at home. Don't color code with pink and purple. Too similar. So we'll dive in with some creative introductions. So Marcus and I were talking about different things you could do, like he said, to engage students. And in this case, like if we're gonna, can we do the whole cocktail party metaphor? I love it. You're gonna get your cocktail party started by having people introduce themselves to each other. This is kind of the first step. Doing a cool introduction discussion in your course. That's something that most courses have. And in Harmonize, you can do, or your platform of your choosing, you can invite your students not just to introduce themselves, but to do cool things like upload images and record video. And then as far as something that's going to make this time saving, in Harmonize, you can do it as an auto-graded discussion, so that it actually sort of like the grading gets taken care of for you. And then that frees you up to do the fun thing of actually like saying, hi, cool student who goes mountain biking or something like that. Sorry, Marcus, I cut you off.
I should have jumped in and said as well, like this one doesn't have to be graded. This can be entirely ungraded. But I would say you're going to have to find some way to encourage your students to do it. So this one doesn't have an easy corollary in other software to use because you do need the auto grading feature, although I think Canvas just released or is going to release someday soon, maybe, auto grading based on multiple due dates. So you can probably accomplish this in Canvas now, or will be able to in the upcoming couple months in terms of the actual auto grading portion of things. So back to you, Alex.
You could also choose, like some LMSs have a sort of incomplete complete grading system where it doesn't do it for you, but you can at least kind of make it quicker to check off if someone did something or not. So that could be an option as well. Another way to save time with this is maybe you're thinking, oh, is it going to take me a long time to write instructions for my topic? You can use an AI assist to help you draft your instructions for this introductory topic, which will then free you up to spend your time recording your own cool introduction video, as instructor Marcus has here. And if you're in Harmonize, you can actually use our instruction generating tool to help you with that. If you're not, you can go out to AI and get some assistance that way. But one cool thing to know about our instruction generating tool, sometimes like you can feel very locked in with the kinds of prompts it's generating. But if it generates something you don't like, down at the bottom, there will be a make suggestions box, and you can put in like whatever you want to there and get it to generate some really cool introduction activities.
Kate asked a Grant's question about how to group students that I think would be a good one to jump into here. I've seen, so there's a couple things. You can set up random self-subscribe groups inside of Canvas. I don't remember, Kate, if you're a Canvas user or not. They do have self-sign-up groups so that students can self-select into groups. It's not the most simple, I will say. And so you have to, maybe this is where now we're leaning away from the instructor workload a little bit because you will have to do a little bit to push that. We are introducing auto grouping so that you don't have to mess with group setup to be able to do that. And that'll come out this fall sometime. I have seen, if you aren't using Harmonize or you're just doing discussions in general, have students self-select into multiple discussion topics. I've seen it being like if you're trying to group them by specific interest areas, you can have them do that. You can also have students submit high-level posts that are their initial topic of what they're trying to be interested in. I'm a sports and athletic person. I'm a whatever type of thing. When you're thinking about how to craft this, though, I do think it's important to, in some way, start the academic process by trying to get them to think about how does their own humanity tie into this course's topic, and so try to get them to do that in some way. I've seen instructors do this where they actually have AI generate an image of them plus their relationship to the content that's going to be taught in the course so that they can actually do the introduction, but they're thinking about the course material as well. So it's not just like, hey, I like turtles. It's great. Like, yeah, I'm in a biology class and the turtle ecosystem is something that I'm really interested in hoping to learn inside of this class as we go through it. So for Kate, maybe follow up with that particular question with the discussion topics, because that's going to get really deep into the Harmonize side of things, and I don't want to drag us into that for those that aren't in Harmonize, but I can follow up with you after that as well to be able to generate. All right. Oh, you got your next button lined all up in a module. You're so awesome, Alex. All right, so this one, now we're going to back way off on the level of engagement. So that one was not really academic, talking about themselves. So there's no stress. They're starting to get started with the content. They're starting to think about the course. The very next thing that I see a lot of instructors do that is total low stakes is to actually have them consume some content and answer some sort of poll question or series of poll questions or a series of micro quizzes or something about this. Best bet is to have those auto-graded. So if it's a Canvas quiz, auto-graded. In our case with polls, there's no correct answer, auto-graded. The idea here is that anytime anyone is consuming content, they want to know that what they should be thinking about. It's a little guided. They want to have an activity that they need to do, which keeps them a little more engaged. And ideally, they want to see what their fellow students think about this topic as well. So in this case, we have them watching a YouTube video, and then we asked a series of sort of open-ended poll questions that they will see the results of once they've actually consumed the content. So it's a way to assign a due date to actually have the reading done or have the YouTube video done or something along those lines, because then if you think about it, we want to have the reading done by Tuesday so we can move on with the class. If you're using our tool, the two are mixed together. If you're not using Harmonize, put in a little micro quiz after it with a specific due date can be the deadline for the reading they were supposed to do. So we're causing them to share information. We're causing them to engage. We're causing them to see what other people are saying about the content. So they're starting to engage very anonymously with each other. But this is kind of that warm-up piece that we were talking about of like, I'm in a class. I'm actually expected to contribute to the class. I actually am in this with my peers. I need to see what they say. That type of real low-level stuff can be quite good to sort of get the conversation going and get them accustomed to this idea that their opinion matters. You can do this with Google Forms. If you don't have access to Harmonize and don't want to do it as a quiz, you can set up, there's a ton of polling things, poll questions out there, or poll tools out there that you can use that are free to use as well. If people have a free poll tool that they like, you could throw it out in the chat. But the whole idea is consume some content, answer some very simple questions. Ideally, there's not even a right answer. It's getting them to start thinking more open-endedly about their opinions with respect to the content and a way to be able to see it. We don't have a word cloud thing built into Harmonize, but I do love word clouds as well. There's a Mentimeter is one out there that's super awesome and free to use where you can actually have them contribute to a word cloud about it so that they're actually seeing their opinions form into a big word cloud as they're starting to consume content. Very low stakes. The reason we say this is low stakes on the instructor is because there's a setup cost, but there's nothing to do during the class. Like you might go check on the page and be like, oh, cool, I see what my students are doing. And then you reference that in a future discussion or a future classroom session or a Zoom session or whatever. But there's no in-class work. So you're not adding to once you've built it, it's good. It's good for all future semesters. So it's a pretty low stakes thing to do.
I'll throw in too, when you choose to do polls instead of quizzes, you're not going to have as many, and they're graded for participation. You aren't going to have as many like questions about grading and as many students being like, I lost half a point for this and I want to dispute it. And like, those are the kinds of things. I'm speaking from my real past as an instructor here. These are the kinds of things that can really eat up your time, even on like, so like even a quiz tends to have like a grading load associated, even if it auto grades, because students come in sort of dispute grading and stuff like that. So the cool thing about a poll is they can usually see based on how they've answered whether they were right or not, because they're like, oh, 95% of the class said X and I said Y. So I do know now that but because it's not graded, they're not like for correctness, it's only graded for participation. They're not going to come dispute with you what the real right answer was. And then you as an instructor can go in and see like, oh, my class is struggling with this. Maybe I'm going to talk about that a little more. So it becomes like a good low stakes, low effort way, like Marcus said, to engage them and then also to hopefully reteach anything you need to reteach.
Right. The next thing we're going to cover is Alex is to cover as well, but I want to highlight the tools that you can use to do this if you're not a Harmonize user. So next one's going to be document annotation with auto grading. There are many tools that do this type of thing. If you have access to Hypothesis at your institution as a similar thing where there can be a document that you're annotating, Perusal does this, and they have a free version if you carefully set it up so it doesn't charge your students. You can do that. You can also do this in Google Docs with anonymous commenting, obviously not integrated with the LMS. So there's a lot of ways to accomplish what Alex is about to show next. And without further ado, I'll turn it back over to Alex.
Yeah. So social annotation, like Marcus said, this is a way to get students to do the reading that maybe takes a little bit less effort from you. Like a lot of traditional ways to encourage reading involve like reading quizzes and things like that, which again, like take a lot of time to make and grade, and you have students disputing grades. Or like you'll do a discussion about the reading, but the reading's over here and the discussion is over here. And so students try to jump to the discussion without doing the reading. If you have a social annotation tool, students can do the reading, and as they're reading, they can find spots that they want to highlight or drop a pin on. They can make a comment, and then they can come and reply to each other. And so it's a way to merge the discussion and the reading, smoosh them right together so they're discussing as they are reading. And for every student except the very first one in there, there will in fact already be like student comments there as they're reading. And so it makes it more interactive and engaging for them. But that interaction and engagement is coming from them and isn't something you're having to build in a lot. Right now, like Marcus was saying, for us, this tool doesn't have auto grading, but it will in spring. Did you say, Marcus?
Yeah, it's coming out in November, so it'll be ready there for you to build into your spring class.
Yay, exciting stuff. So then in our tool, at least, it will grade them on, how many comments they did and how many replies they did. So you can, I think that's the plan. And so it'll be, holding them sort of accountable for having done that base level, met that base level requirement. But then you should see like huge, like I at least saw big gains in my class in terms of reading compliance when I started using a social annotation tool. And it's just a great way for students to get in and engage with each other. You'll see there are these little like ats here. They get notified if someone replies to them, which is cool. It's pretty easy to flip through your annotations. And if you have something that's not just a reading, but also has images, we have pins. So depending on if you're teaching something more like visual, students can actually drop pins for their comments as well.
We filed this one under engagement as well because there's a lot of research, and one in particular, there's this framework called the ICAP framework out of ASU, ICAP, that shows that if you can turn something that's a passive reading into an active or interactive activity, they're actually going to get more comprehension out of what they're reading by engaging with each other as they're doing it. It actually drives up the actual outcomes of what they're trying to consume. So this one is if you can use one of the auto-graded versions, is just you have to set it up true. But as long as the students come in and do the thing on time, they are consuming the reading, they are engaging with each other. They're doing it in sort of a well-structured way because there's content for them to look at. And if they are kind of shy, they can come in and see what everybody else is saying before they actually get started. I will say, consider groups. If you have too big of a class on this one, I think most of the tools, except for the Google Doc, will allow you to group students into small groups. For those in here that are harmonized, that are doing Moodle or D2L, groups are coming in the fall as well. So you'll be able to do grouping for those for Canvas and Blackboard. It's already there. So consider that as well from an engagement perspective, because if you have a large class and 50 people, it's going to be a bit of a mess. I don't know, Alex, how big were the classes that you did this with?
I did them with classes of 23, and then and I did not put them in smaller groups. And the smallest reading I had was only a couple of pages, and it got pretty dense. And so in that case, I was warning them to try to like highlight minimally so that like the highlights didn't stack up too much. The pinning tool can be cool in situations like that. But yeah, the grouping, like you can have like it has a lot to do with not just the size of the class, but the size of the document. And so that's something to think about for sure. But in general, like 23 students with a solid essay was fine. And just got a little more wild when we were down to only a few pages. So
Stepping on each other's toes a lot.
yeah,
All right, is that good on social annotations?
I think so. Let's move right along to, we're now into, Marcus has a series of really cool things he came up with.
I think they're really cool. We'll see. So a lot of the conversations we have around engagement is like, oh, in my online class, my students don't engage anymore. They just let ChatGPT answer the discussion questions for them. And how do we combat that while we're still doing engagement? Coming back into, I led in and said we weren't going to do much in discussions, but then some of these ideas are definitely drifting back in discussion. So my apologies, I misled us at the start. I'd forgotten some of these ideas that we had pulled up here. But like having an explicit conversation about AI use in the class is a good way to get your students' opinions expressed, get them thinking about why are you actually teaching something? Like, why is this even in the class? Why should you care? Why am I putting this in there? Um, and then have them actually have a conversation where they are looking at each assignment coming up in the class, either by looking in the syllabus or looking in the modules, wherever they need to find it based on how your class is built. Um, but then discuss what would be an unethical way to use AI and what would be an ethical way to use AI, and have them have a discussion about that. Now, this has a bunch of benefits. One, it causes them to actually look at what's going to happen in the class. So you get them to go ahead and go through and review everything so they understand what's coming. Makes them think about what you're going to teach and why, and it allows them to then take that and outline what they think is ethical or not about it. This is the assumption. The assumption here, and in some instructors I've talked to, they're like, I don't want them to brainstorm how to use AI, and I'm here to say they've already figured this all out, and if they're going to use AI, they're going to use AI. So at least getting them thinking about the why and the how and what's good AI use and what's not, is a way to get them to engage as humans. To then be able to turn around, or at the very least, if they use AI to do it, at least they're going to have a good opinion from AI on what's ethical and not in terms of what's being learned. When you are doing these, I think it's really important that this also sort of lends to the fact that you're probably going to have some explicit AI use that you want them to cite when they're actually further along in the class. So if they do use AI for something, you want them to be able to go ahead and work through it. And so there's going to be times you're okay with that, and there's going to be times you're not. So I'm going to toss out a good asset here into the chat. And Alex, if you can open this one up, this is my favorite AI o-meter, if you will, like the when is AI allowed, when is it not type of thing. And so I don't know if you can pull that one up in the same screen. Having something like this, so if you are going to open the conversation about AI and have them picking apart your course on what's good AI use and not, you also need to be explicit of when you're okay with it. And this is a very simple numerical scheme to be like, here is at the start of the class, here's how we're going to do this. There are going to be times I'm going to ask for no AI, and here's why. In those cases, I'm going to have you present things in video, or I'm going to have you do it in PowerPoint, et cetera, so that you can't even easily use AI. But however, there are going to be times where full AI is allowed, and we've already talked about the ethical way and not when we're having this conversation as you go through. So
Yeah, and I love this too because even like in the student example we drafted, um, I actually like for a lot of essay assignments, I actually would not have agreed with, the student is stating something she thinks is an ethical use of AI, but I actually, for a lot of my assignments, would not have wanted this much AI use. And so like this assignment becomes like a really low stakes, low pressure way to unearth if you and your students have disagreements about what ethical AI use is. And then like as Marcus is saying, I think this assessment just makes it really clear because at the end of the day, it's not actually like it can vary per assignment, right? Which is why that's a worthy topic of discussion because it's something you can debate. That's why it's cool to have a discussion about it. But then like when it comes to we're actually doing the assignment, it's good to just be like, and here's my call on what I as your instructor think is ethical use for this.
and I
So
heard you all say this was ethical in the discussion, and I'm here to disagree with you, in fact, that this one is not.
for this particular assignment, I don't want you. Anyway, so yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Um,
And I don't know if we had pointed this out. You can, of course, have this be auto graded. And then, like, that saves you time and gives you a chance to go in and check what they were saying was ethical or not. So you can actually moderate that a bit more.
Yeah, this is going to sound weird, but we're not a big fans of defining teaching as grading. It is a great
Mhm.
time for you to offer feedback and to do critical assessment, but when possible, like keep the low stakes assessments going, let them be auto graded, and then you spend your time actually teaching and facilitating and nudging, because that is way more, I think, and a lot of people in the world think, but not everyone agrees. So you're welcome to disagree with this, but it's a better use of your time because you are then in the classroom discussing with them, nudging them, mentoring them. You're not spending your time in the gradebook after the fact, submitting feedback for them that you hope they read. And there's a lot of research that shows that motivation is actually a good combat against cheating as well. And so if you're in there excited about what they're doing, you're recording a quick video or you're tossing a quick comment on what they're doing, they feel your presence and they're less likely to cheat than if you are sort of an after the fact grader as well. Um, I saw one survey that said it was like a 15 to 20% reduction in cheating that happens just from having a very motivated instructor in a classroom versus not. So something to keep in mind. And then carrying on that same sort of engagement view. So we're doing all these things that are getting people to think about the course and think about the content. Alex, I think this was your idea. This wasn't my idea, was it? Wasn't this one your idea?
Oh,
Anyway,
I don't know. I thought this was yours, but
anyway, one of us came up with the idea of, have your students actually do a one-shot um, uh, AI prompt to answer something, and then have them critique it. So this is one step further than just what's good use and what's not. This is like actually use AI. Give us the one prompt you used to answer any particular assignment in the class, and then get the results, share the results, and critique the results, whether you think they were good or bad, what you think was missed or not. This can replace an entire assignment. So instead of being like write an essay, you can be like have AI write an essay and then actually have them critique it. And so Alex built out a content here where they actually uploaded the essay and did a critique of it in terms of what they were doing. I don't think you actually had them share the prompt though, did you? I think I just threw that one in randomly.
um yeah, I think I put so you this in this case this is assuming you have the prompt living elsewhere.
Okay.
Um but yeah, so there's the essay that they generated um is down here, and then they are critiquing it here. Um and I think that's cool because like AI does out it yes, it will generate an essay, but they tend to be stylistically flat, overly formal, simplistic in a lot of ways and lack character. And so I think if you could get your students to start sort of seeing the AI writing for what it is, they will maybe get more excited about doing their own writing that is going to be more idiosyncratic but more fun.
And very important in a lit crit course, Liz, you're right. Um, and I will say as well, this is also going to be very educational for those of you who are not as familiar with AI to see what it can actually do, because it is a little terrifying what it can actually do. And your assessments are probably not as resilient as you'd like to think they are for it. Um, we often recommend if you're going to stick with an essay writing assignment, have them do something like this and or have them do a PowerPoint presentation or screen share or something so that it's a little harder for them to do a one-off, make them reflect on the learning, those types of things. So something to keep in mind. This will also be a great way for you to see like the variety of what they're managing to do, how they're approaching it from an AI perspective as well.
It can be good too to put in your own, like you said, have them do it or put in your own and see what kind of stuff gets generated. This one has what I consider like a huge AI tell, the giant headings in the middle of it. So you know, when you see what kind of stuff AI generates for your assignments, it gets easier to spot that.
Does this imply, Alex, that every time I add large headings in my Google Docs, you accuse me of being an AI bot?
No, it's only weird if you submitted them as an essay. If you yes, anyone who has huge heading blocks in the middle of an essay, I'm going to anyway.
This is my disclaimer moment where it's also really hard to detect AI. So
Yeah.
get out of the detection mode, get into the bypassing that in some other way because it's an awkward conversation. It's hard to do correctly 100% of the time. None of the tools actually work to do this 100% of the time. So proceed with caution.
That
Uh,
takes us to.
and is this one me or you, Alex? I don't remember.
It can be either one of us. It was going to be you, but I'm happy to talk about it as well. But this was the idea of instead of just being like in detection mode, like what can you do to make it a little more resilient, maybe? And we were thinking of that. Could you add a video reflection?
Gotcha. Yeah. So the AI, for those that aren't as familiar with AI as well, when you're trying to get your students to engage, if you're worried they're just doing AI in the discussion just over and over and over again, have them actually do something non-textual where they are tacking on some reflection on the learning process. And this one is great from an engagement perspective because the students can actually, if they're doing video or audio, they actually get to see or hear each other. A little harder to do in some tools than others. Most LMSs at this point do allow some type of video and or audio recording. But if you need to do screen share and you're not using Harmonize, you may have to drift out into other things. But you can have them submit the essay, have them stick with it, but have them actually talk about it. It's great from a learning science perspective. It's great from engagement because now all the students can see all the other students talking about the assignment and how they approached it and how it was difficult. Lowers anxiety in the class of like if everybody says it was difficult, you feel like you're more part of the cohort as well. And so it's got a bunch of great benefits to be able to do it. You as the instructor don't have to watch all these videos. This is where the time saving things come in. Get your students to critique each other's reflections as part of the assignment. We'll get into formalized peer critique in a moment as a great way to keep engagement high, but But this one here is like, you can watch it if you think you need a little extra info about them and spot check a few of them and respond to a few of them. So once again, you're spending your time engaging on it, but we're keeping it authentic by having them do this multimedia component. And so you're not having to watch all of them, and you should not watch all of them because it's probably 2 minutes of video plus 30 students in your class is a lot of time. If you do have that time, great, but it's hard to spend that much time on every assignment.
You can also in Harmonize set like a time limit to keep them from talking for like 10 minutes, because students can talk a long time about their work, which is awesome. But like if you do want to try to listen to a few of these, you don't want to stumble upon a bunch of like 10-minute videos. So
Cool.
it's easy.
The next one we're going to cover is so let's see, actually a question before we move on. Scott asked, so how would you grade the video reflections? Just submitted or didn't submit? And my answer would be yes to that. It's there as a, did you submit it? It's there, you got the grade, fantastic. And then spot check them. So if you see an essay that looks really kind of AI structured, and then you go listen to the reflection because you wanted to spot check that particular student, and the reflection sounded like they had no idea what the essay was actually about, it's a point for a conversation. And so you're kind of picking and choosing. But if you're flipping through some of the essays and you're like, oh, good, yeah, nice, oh, good, yeah, oh, wait, what's this? Then go watch the video. So it's not graded on the content of the video. It's really just an additional authenticity check, but it's also just good learning science because they had to come back and reflect on the learning when they were doing it. So it's not like it's wasted work on their part. And so you can get to know your students a little better when you feel like you need to as well. From that regard. But yeah, don't grade on the content of a reflection. Just have be a present or not present type of thing as well.
Are we maybe getting transcripts at some point too?
We are, yeah. So we are. So if you also don't like watching videos like me because they're too slow, we are adding transcripts into harmonized videos. And when we are also handling the audio description Title II requirements, we're going to be using AI to pull a lot of that stuff together. So you as an instructor will be able to quickly read and scan the content of what was said without having to watch the video. So the transcript is great. We're doing it, as Scott mentioned, it's accessibility. You would want that transcript. Right now we auto caption everything. We are pulling that out into a transcript as well so you can quickly consume it. And so that they can quickly consume it without having to listen to the audio track as well. And that will just speed up consumption of the content in addition to that. So for those that are using Harmonize, that stuff is coming out in the springtime because there's a lot of new Title II requirements coming down for accessibility for public institutions in the spring. If you're not familiar with that, reach out to us. We can talk about what that is. All right.
This takes
Next
us
one
to
is
a me item.
Yeah, this is a you item. So let me lead. Are you going to do the formal Q&A or are you doing your auto graded? Or are you going to do both?
Well, I was going to use this as the visual, but then talk about some other things as well.
Okay.
Do you want to intro it?
No, you go ahead then.
Okay, so I was going to say, we also, another kind of way to save time and get your students, well, there are a few different variations on this. One is, could I get my students to answer each other's questions, perhaps in a Q&A board? So there are a few different platforms for this. If you have Harmonized, like we do have Q&A boards built in that you can do either like one at the course level, or you can do topic level Q&As. And the cool thing about these is that students can actually answer each other's questions, and then you can go in and mark the best answer. So you can get students to answer each other's questions, and then you can highlight the ones that are actually good answers. And then even if students aren't sort of giving like the good answer, you can drop one in, but then at least it's in a place everyone can see it. And I think there are some different variations on this. One thing that I found really effective when I was teaching before major essay assignments, I would have a very low stakes, I think I just gave like a couple of points, but a very low stakes graded discussion board where I said like, I want you to post, like your job is to post a question about the upcoming essay assignment. Here's a link to the assignment sheet. Here's a video of me walking through it. And then they would post questions and I would answer them. And the time saving thing there wasn't so much that they were answering each other's. It was all the questions that I would normally get 100 times each via email were in one place where they all could see them. And so we created a frequently asked questions for the assignment. Basically, we created an FAQ for the assignment together. And then like a pro tip for that, like on top of that, I started to get annoyed with students asking questions that were obviously answered in the assignment sheet. And when I did the good teacher thing and asked them why that was happening, they were like, well, you told us we had to ask a question and I didn't have a question. So I just made one up. I'm like, okay, well, fair enough. So after that, I would start instead saying, you need to post a question about the assignment. Or if you don't have a question, state something you think is going to be challenging. So then you don't have any more of those made up questions. You only get real questions. And then actually a lot of the time, if something is challenging, if they think something is going to be challenging, there's a question there. Like they haven't formulated it, but there is a question or there's something you can address. So that can be a really cool way to get those questions out in the open and answered in one place, instead of answering them again and again via email.
And you did these as extra credit as well, or was this graded
I
and
did
for
them as
credit?
graded, but very low stakes, like 1 or 2 points out of 1,000. But the reason, so I think there are a couple of reasons it works. Even when you put very few points on it, it works. For one thing, they do want to ask questions, but they don't want to feel, quote unquote, like dumb. And so they don't like normally like to ask questions in front of each other. But if they know, like literally that's the point of the assignment, like they've been told to ask a question, they're supposed to ask a question, they will ask questions. And with very little prompting, you can get them to ask questions. And yeah, create that space.
And this is
But you
another
could
one
do
where
this for
once again
sure.
you're not grading whether it's a good question or not. Like it's
No.
just graded for completion.
Yes,
Um,
I would use the auto grading if you did it in Harmonize for sure.
cool. All right. Coming leaning back into the AI world of things a little bit. There are going to be times where let's say you don't want to launch a formalized peer review process. You really want your students to go through a couple drafts. You really want them to work through things. And the assignment, and you're not necessarily going to have time to give your entire class, let's say there's 100 students in it, feedback on each and every individual draft that they are putting through before they get to the final project. Um, there's a great use of AI here where we have this built into Harmonize, and we'll demo it that way, but you can have your students do it with their normal AI tools, which is basically, I want you to make your first draft. I want you to make your first draft and share it with me. And if you're using Harmonize, you can use the AI coach to like get some feedback based on that. So give the students a rubric and have them actually use AI to assess their work against the rubric to see where they can improve, and let them do this multiple times so that they can actually go through the improvement process of making the essay, so that you can both see the improvement and the evolution if you want to dig in that deep, or if you're using Harmonize, you'll be able to see in the AI coach how many times they scanned and kind of what the rubric score we gave them was. So you'll be able to say like, okay, here was the rubric. They started out with some room for improvement on a couple of the things, and they made it better. And then they finally turned it in. In Harmonize now, you can do this for individual assignments. There's no necessary peer connectivity here. You could do this as a peer open discussion as well if you want. I like this as a private one because there's no pressure to put a good first draft out there, except for the expectation that the instructor is going to see it. But if you already told them, put it out, ask AI for feedback, make a second draft, ask AI for feedback again, make a third draft for them to be able to improve it, they will go through that process. Privately, it's very kind of emotionally more safe for them to do so. And it's using AI as the sort of peer to be able to do this so that by the time they get to do their final assignment, they have taken feedback from somewhere, be it from AI, be it from peers in a peer critique, be it from you as the instructor along the way. But before you get to the end result, they'll be able to do this. No, Alex, when we were talking through this one, was there any additional thing we wanted to toss in?
So we also had them include, in our plan, we were going to have them include a video reflection on sort of like what the feedback was that they received and how they incorporated it into their final draft, because that again creates like a little bit of authenticity. And then the other thing I would say is I really I love this activity in Harmonize. Like I love students getting real-time writing feedback that is not hand-holdy. Like we showed it here quickly, but we didn't dive deep into it. It's just sort of like pointing them to the parts of the rubric where they can maybe improve. It's not giving them, here's the specific thing I want you to fix. Here's how you can fix it. And I love this use of AI for real-time writing feedback, because if they just go out, I know we're saying like you can use ChatGPT too, but like yes, you can. But like as a warning, ChatGPT like will often then, especially if you're using it in basic mode, will immediately be like, here's your feedback. Now, do you want me to make the changes? And it's like right there immediately. It's not even a separate post. It's like, here's your feedback. And then the feedback ends with, do you want me to do it? And so I I really like the guardrails in Harmonize that help the students leverage this in a good way.
And I will say some things I've seen instructors do as well is that they will actually have students share the transcript of the conversation they had with AI. So if you're not using Harmonize to do it, have them share what the conversation was. So then you can see, yeah, it did say, do you want me to make it better? And the student said, no. Great. I mean, sure, they might have asked to make it better in another window, but at the very least, you can lay out that expectation of
Yeah.
what are you willing to accept from an AI perspective here as well. Some people do screen shares with this, but then it's much slower because you have to watch the student type versus just sharing the transcript, but they can at least verbalize what they're reading and what they're seeing with it. All you have to do for this is just copy and paste the rubric and throw it into AI and throw the actual prompt in and throw the essay in, and it's got all it is. So it's a pretty, even if you're not using Harmonize, you should be aware it's pretty easy for your students to do this. If you're not leaning into AI, they can do it anyway. So at least let them document what they're doing as well. This is a way, once again, to not have you always having to provide all of the feedback. You can chime in on more of the human side because if they do AI writing of the essays, they're going to be not great. They'll be like B quality work, maybe high C quality work, depending on how much time they spent sculpting the prompts of what they wanted it to say.
You reminded me of something else too, like when you said the leaning into the AI. If someone is really like AI savvy and interested, an instructor is really AI savvy and interested, I saw a really cool thing recommended by someone on LinkedIn the other day. Someone in their class I think this was a class that was a little more bent toward AI and understanding AI, but they had their students essentially like train their own AI assistants. In other words, kind of like write a meta prompt that told their AI assistants what they could and couldn't do. And so, like, you could actually sort of have your students create their AI writing tutor that had the guardrails on appropriately if you wanted to. But this is not time saving. This is for people who just like
Just
this
thinking
is
that.
you really you want to run toward this is the people who want to run toward the AI and are very excited about it in different ways. So
Yeah, definitely not time savings on that one, but definitely fun.
fun, but not time saving.
All right, and Alex will cover this last one because she builds the peer review extravaganza. But I do want to put a prompt in. Just a lot of people think of peer review as literature only. Um, it is not literature only, does not have to be literature only. All you're doing is formally making students look at each other's work and using a rubric if you choose to be able to do that. It can be any type of work, media or otherwise. Um, we're going to cover this one in an auto-graded sense because that's how Harmonize can do it. You can do this informally in discussions as well with auto-grading turned on for completion, et cetera, those types of things. But I want you to turn off the thought part of your brain that thinks like peer review English lit courses, because peer review is one of the best ways to combat AI use because the students have to critique each other's work, be it multimedia or otherwise. And so it creates huge engagement, creates huge AI resilience, and is something that if you're just grading for process completion, doesn't necessarily cause a lot more work for you. Having said that, please don't try to use the Canvas peer review tool because it is going to cause you a lot of extra work. So do it informally in a discussion. I would say don't try to ramp up the Canvas peer review tool. That's a lot of what caused us to build our own peer review tool. The other LMSs, I don't even know if they have a peer review tool. So. All right, Alex, all that lead in. Back to you now. I just want people to turn off the lit only part of peer review that's often in people's brains.
No, I appreciate that you did that because otherwise people are like, ah, peer review, this part's not for me. And they're so I actually really appreciate that. And peer review, like Marcus said, can help with AI resilience. But it helps even more actually when you are doing something that's not just literature, that maybe is more than just writing. So we do have a cool peer review tool. And in our mockup, we've got the different kinds of things, like Marcus is saying, you can have your students submit their slides or they can create and submit images. They can record videos or record slide presentations. And if you have your students submit these kinds of things for peer review, that's like a little more resilient to AI use. And depending on what platform you're using, you may have some good tools that also help even further. So for example, line comments. So if you're doing writing, having them do line comments is a little bit AI resilient, only because, like, yes, they can ask the AI to generate the line comments, but then they have to go in and like find the spots to put them. So it's just easier to go in and put them in. But if you have your students like recording presentations and then ask them to like leave timestamp feedback in Harmonize, this is something that's harder for the AI to do and is much easier almost for students to do for real. So having your students, design and critique each other's multimedia assignments is pretty neat. But even if you're just doing straight peer review, I think Marcus is right. There's some AI resilience because the students feel a little more accountable to each other, and want to give each other good feedback. What are some other things we could say about this? Yes, this can be auto graded. And in Harmonize, like the auto grading, if you have them copy and paste their draft into the text box, the auto grading can even take into account, did you meet the minimum word count for the draft? Like the title of this, less stress, more success. I used to run peer review all the time. And so much of the stress is just like people not submitting drafts on time, not submitting full drafts, all these kinds of things. So with the auto grading, you can tune it. So they need to submit a draft, they need to submit it on time. They need to do the reviews for each other. So hopefully you can get this activity that's a little more resilient to AI use, but it's not, like Marcus said, it's not going to be such a huge lift for you.
Can't stress this enough. Like the feedback so we just launched this peer review tool in the summer. A lot of people have used it, and feedback is like, wow, that just made it easier. Mainly because Alex and I spent hours listening to podcasts about the complaints, and Alex had run peer review, and so we tried to solve all those problems. So this is a bit of a push for those that are using Harmonize for discussions. Give peer review a shot, because if you've tried it before with other tools and it's painful, we were explicitly trying to fix that instructor workload part of things so that you could complete peer review in this AI world without having to fight with the workload side of things. There are other tools out there that do peer review. I don't know if they are as easy to use or not. Hopefully they are. Feedback Fruits is out there, a little hard to set up, I've heard, but easy to use after that. Peerceptive, Critic are some other ones as well. Allison, I didn't see you in here. Allison's one of the people who actually used it. So awesome. She's going to present with us later on in, I don't remember, November sometime about it. So there's a webinar on our website about talking about peer review. And so, yeah, we've had some really good feedback of people doing this, and it really just helps with the peer engagement, because it's putting it out on them to do. That's great learning science, trying to remove as much of the painful process from it as possible. All right. So in review, I think that was our last one, wasn't it, Alex?
Yep.
So in review, start with a poll. Start with a introduction topic. Start with them analyzing your assignments for AIU. Start with low stakes, non-academic, not graded for correctness, ways to get your students to start doing things and talking to each other. You're kind of just there as a mentor. You're there to like chime in on the things that you thought were cool or neat. Students, by and large, love it when their instructors chime in on things, especially if you're not there critiquing and grading, because then they're like in this sort of big brother sort of mode. You're there just to be the wise voice that can help them out, even if it's just giving them a reaction or giving them a thumbs up or whatever it is. So you can kind of play this low stakes. I'm not really engaging with every student and grading everything, and I'm getting all this stuff. But by the time you're in week 2 or week 3, your students have done a lot of stuff together as a student group without you necessarily having to interact with each and every single one of them. That's great for then for the rest of the course. You now have a group of students who kind of know each other. Not great, but somewhat know each other more so than often happens in an asynchronous course, and also more than often happens in an in-person course because you're in a big lecture hall. And so something to keep in mind. And then build as you go. We finished with peer review there because it is the most intense of the things we offered, I think, in terms of thinking about it and how does it fit into your course and everything. But once again, it's auto-graded for process completion. You're there just kind of watching what the students are doing and chiming in if they're not doing great reviews of each other. All right, any questions for us? You're welcome to throw them in the chat. You're welcome to raise your hand, and we can cover those. We can go back and touch on any of those particular topics as you go through. So feel free. We'll hang out for another minute or two and see if there's any questions. And I can pick it up from there.
Marcus, I was going to throw in one thing that I've heard already from an instructor was the use of peer review more for a discussion. So instead of using it for actual discussion based, they're using the tool more for discussion, kind of similar to how people were using discussions for peer review. But some of the tools within peer review allow for, you know, the automatic pairing of students and things like that, and they're wanting to take advantage of that, plus the auto grading. So that's also another option as well.
Yeah, so let me dwell on that a bit because there was a gentleman at ASU that was doing this that I thought was fascinating. I don't know if that's the same guy you talked to or not, but he didn't like the fact that the first posts got the most commentary, not because it was the most interesting, but that's what happens in discussions, right? Students come in, they read the first one, they're like, good enough, I'm responding here. I was like, great. But then not everybody's getting commentary, et cetera. Set up a simple auto-graded peer review process, even if it's just for discussion, and we're going to assign the students to comment on each other because most of those students are really not going to read more than 2 posts anyway. That's what the data shows. They come in, they read their 2 posts, they comment, they leave. Set up a peer review, they're going to be forced to read somebody else's post and give feedback. You don't have to do rubric scoring in peer review. It can be very informal, what we call qualitative, where you're just like, I left some feedback for you. It had 200 words, great, type of thing. So that everybody's getting a comment, they're being exposed to different opinions. And so it's a replacement for discussions that is just, it's forcing them to spread out more. As well. So that's a good point, David. Like it doesn't have to be, I'm critiquing a paper or I'm critiquing a PowerPoint presentation. It can just be a way to force your students to be exposed to somebody other than the first 5 students that post in the discussion, which is generally what happens. And the same 5 students always post first in the discussion because they're the go-getters. So thank you, David, for that. While we were talking about that, any questions arise? Going once, going twice. All right, awesome. Thank you all for attending. Really appreciate it. I appreciate that you're willing to sit through a webinar to think about new ideas. We'll send this recording out. If you try some of this stuff in your class and you have improvements, like we learned so much of this from the instructors who are using the tools. We build them with a specific idea. They take them and they do something totally different with them. And it's awesome. So when you do that, let us know. And we will, you know, jump on that and we will start promoting that to other people if you're comfortable with it. And as David mentioned in the chat, if there are any folks here who are not Harmonize users, we do free pilots to try it out for a semester, so you can prove to yourself if it works or not. So let us know, and we can help you out with that. Thanks, David. I always forget that there are folks that don't do Harmonize in the room because the majority of people in the room are from Harmonize schools. So, all right, thanks everybody. Have a good day.